going on, guys? Greg Ferris here, and I wanted to make an informative video. Wanted to do this for a few days, and there's so much stuff going on there about, hopefully you guys can see me, metabolic damage, metabolic adaptation, all this stuff, a lot of BS like always being thrown around there. So I figured I would do an informative video and talk about essentially what actually does happen physiologically when we lose fat, when we lose weight, and why you're probably not metabolically damaged, and why this is actually what's supposed to happen when we diet. So a lot of people say like that math doesn't add up, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I cut calories, and I just stop losing weight, and I plateau. This will not necessarily give you the tips to stop that, but this will at least give you the understanding of why that is happening. So if you don't like lengthy videos, if you don't like science, probably just cut the video off and go watch something else. But if you do, stick with me, and I think this will be really, really helpful. So I'm going to get right into it, guys. So I think the easiest way to do this is essentially have my whiteboards here on the table and then just talk and hopefully cover the mic with my hand. So the title is Adaptations to Fat Loss 101. So just kind of stick with me here. I'll use my little pointer and briefly talk about the stuff too, because it'll make no sense if I don't talk about it. So first thing we have to talk about is obviously we're going to go with fat loss. In order to get fat loss, we usually have to do a combination of caloric restriction, which means eating less calories than you're burning, and cardio, or any kind of exercise, but cardio is the example I give here. That's usually what increases for physique type people when they want to lose weight. So the first thing you have to understand is that fat loss, caloric restriction, and cardio all increase cortisol. I'm not going to talk a lot about like each one of these hormones and everything like that, but just know that. So all three of those increase cortisol, and cortisol actually increases leptin. I didn't put that there, or sorry, it doesn't increase leptin. It leads to leptin decreasing, as well as fat loss. If you see that there, the more weight you lose, you're going to decrease leptin. That's just kind of, again, an adaptation. And when you calorically restrict, you're also going to decrease leptin as well, and you cannot really stop this from happening. So decreasing leptin pretty much leads to these things, along with some other stuff, and we won't look at that right now. So a decrease in leptin leads to those big four. So I'll just go to the top. Number one, NEAT. So NEAT is, wow, I don't even know what it stands for. NEAT is essentially non-exercise something activity. I don't know. It's essentially what you're doing that's not exercise, is burning calories. So like me talking right now, me kind of fidgeting. You see the people that like are foot tappers, walking instead of taking the bus. All of those things that you don't consciously think about are NEAT. So what generally tends to happen when we diet is we move less. When you're not feeling good, when you're tired from a good workout, you don't probably want to go walk your dog. You probably don't want to do anything else as lay on the couch. And the further you get on the fat loss spec, like the leaner you get, the more that decreases. Like at the end of a contest prep, you watch somebody and they are just zombie mode. They're conserving every ounce of energy they possibly can. So one of the things you can correct that is you try to counteract that and do more NEAT than you think you need to do. But again, it's just going to happen. You're going to move less. You're going to fidget less. It's going to happen from leptin and just getting leaner. And again, the leaner you get, the more that will happen there. So second thing, BMR, this is basal metabolic rate. This is essentially just what it takes for you to maintain your function of all your tissue and all of that. So this is not including any exercise at all. So how that decreases during a fat loss phase, because you are actually losing fat and losing muscle. So someone's basal metabolic rate at 200 pounds, I'll give an example in a second, but someone's basal metabolic rate at 200 pounds, if they lose, 10, 15, 20 pounds of muscle tissue, obviously their basal metabolic rate is going to be less than what it originally started at. The BMR can really fluctuate from person to person based on a lot of factors, mainly lean body mass, but whatever it is if you're losing muscle and fat, it will decrease. So regardless of where your starting point is, it will always decrease. The third one is the thermic effect of food, TEF. So this is pretty simple here. you're going to have to most likely eat less food to lose weight. Therefore, if you're eating less food, the thermic effect of that food is going to overall decrease. And then lastly, the thermic effect of exercise. This kind of ties in with BMR, but something that weighs 250, a human being, doing an exercise has to move more weight across the whatever, if they're sprinting or whatever, so they will burn an absolute more amount of calories than someone who weighs 150. That's just kind of a really basic fact of physics. So hopefully that makes sense. That's kind of the first part here, and now I'm going to move over to number 2. So again, if it doesn't make sense, you can shoot me a question or pause the video or something, but I'm hoping this will help some people. So here is the example of how all of those things can kind of combine, and why your adaptations to fat loss are not metabolic damage. Possibly, I'm not going to say it's not happening, but this is the adaptation, the normal response to losing fat, to losing weight. So my example, to make it really simple, is a 200-pound male who is maintaining his weight at about 3,000 calories, okay? So say this guy is like, I want to lose 20 pounds, and this is not how you diet, by the way. This just makes it a lot easier than doing a week-by-week kind of cut. So let's just say he ends his calories, or he takes his calories to 2,300, so down 700, and in 8 weeks he weighs 20 less pounds, which would obviously make him weigh 180 pounds. So what has happened with the NEAT, with the BMR, the TEF, and the TEE as he has dropped 20 pounds? Let's check it out. So I'll actually start from the bottom here because it's the easiest way to explain this. So TEE, the thermic effect of exercise, I have that at approximately 1 hour. So say if you did approximately 1 hour of work per day, this is kind of how it would fit. So I'll post the links on where I found this information at, but roughly, again, this is going to vary depending on the activity and whatnot, but roughly that 200-pound male per that hour of pretty vigorous activity would burn about 600 calories, and then now that 180-pound male is going to burn about 500 calories. This is a 100-calorie difference, okay? So the thermic effect of food, I have a really awesome glare there. So the thermic effect of food is roughly about 10%. Again, this can change depending on the macronutrient composition. Protein is the most thermogenic food that macronutrient you can consume, but I'm not going to talk about that. So yeah, it's roughly about 10% though. Let's assume that his macronutrient ratios didn't change that much. So roughly, again, at 3,000 calories, 10% is 300, and at 2,300 calories, 10% is 23, or not 2,300, 230. So hopefully my math is decent so far. So you can see that that is a difference of 70 calories, okay? Now we move on to BMR. Here we go. So now we move on to BMR, basal metabolic rate. And again, I don't have a necessary basal metabolic rate for someone 200 pounds because it's going to vary. But it's not important that it varies. It's important that it will decrease when you lose tissue. And I'll talk about how that happens. So I have roughly 81 calories. You're like, how'd you come up with that number? We shoot over here, and you find that roughly 1 pound of muscle expends 7 to 10 calories at rest, and 1 pound of fat expends about 2 to 3 calories at rest. This is kind of where that, not myth, but just kind of misunderstanding of, you know, muscle speeds up your metabolism, all that stuff. I have a separate video about that, but anyways. So say you had a pretty good diet as far as not doing a ton of cardio, protein was high, you did it relatively slowly with that 20 pounds in 8 weeks, that's okay. Let's just say you did things pretty good, and of that 20, you lost 17 pounds of fat and 3 pounds of muscle, which I think is pretty damn good way of dieting. It's not gonna, everyone thinks they just melt off fat, but so yeah, that's a pretty good way to look at things. Again, you take the 17 pounds of fat at 3 calories per, that's 51 calories, and then the 3 pounds of muscle at a roughly 10 calories per, you have an adaptation of 81 calories from that 20 pounds of tissue that you lost. So that's where I got the 81 calories there. Hopefully that will focus. So yeah, that's how I get to 81. I just round out to 80 at the top. But then you have NEAT. So again, this is kind of the unconscious moving that you do less of as you lose weight. Again, this number will vary here from person to person, but if that's not important, it's important that it will decrease. And I will note that this number will decrease differently for people. This is simply an average based on some research that I found. I found most of it to be within like 100 to 300 calories. So I went with it in between. Again, I can't give perfect things like this on a video. So if you add all of that up, you get a total of 450 calories of diet adaptations. So this is why someone that starts their diet at 3,000 calories and drops it to 2,300 may expect to see more weight loss than that 20 pounds. And maybe they stall out there and they're like, I don't get it. This is why it happens. You have a decrease in NEAT, a decrease in BMR, you're eating less food, and you have less tissue to move. So again, these are just kind of general outlines. It's not going to be perfect for all people, but hopefully this video kind of lets you guys know the adaptations that do happen when you diet. Again, to kind of summarize, all of this is controlled by the decrease in leptin, which you really can't control. But then the main things that happen are these four. These four, I gave the examples over here. Again, these are examples, not 100%. And again, these will become more apparent the leaner you get, and that is why the simple, 3,500 calories, 500 calories a day to lose a pound of fat simply doesn't add up, because we have a diet adaptation. And the reason for this is, again, there's probably many theories, but it's most likely just a evolutionary thing where you don't want to die. So you losing every pound you lose is a little bit closer to death if you actually think about it. So our body doesn't want to die. We want to survive. So our body is kind of smart, if you want to put it that way, in the sense that it slows everything down so that we can conserve energy as much as possible. I might do like a follow-up video as how you can not stop this, but prevent it as much as possible when dieting, such as like eating more protein, such as like being more conscious of your NEAT, such as lifting weights when you're losing weight to keep up your BMR and retain muscle mass, all those things. But hopefully you guys like this video. Hopefully you learned something from this video. If you have any questions for me about this, feel free to let me know. I'll post some further research and stuff like that if you guys want to get into it in the description box. And until next time, guys, take care.